r/AskReddit. Posted by u/moon_Keegan. Girls of Reddit, what is the creepiest thing a man has said to you in public? I was 14, out shopping at a narrow post hall when these two dudes approached me. They had to be in their mid to late 20s. They followed me around the store and kept asking me to try on the mini skirt I had picked out, asked me where I lived, my name, and just generally kept following and harassing me. I was super freaked out, hoping that my mom and brother would come back to the store soon to get me out of there. Something very similar happened to my then 13-year-old daughter and her friend, at an H&M. They called me crying and begging me to get them from the mall early. When I got there, they said he'd been in his car just watching them as they waited for me to pull up, but had driven away as soon as I got there. I did my best to make sure no cars were following us home. The idea that he might be following us, and end up knowing where they live, scared the hell out of me. Merry Christmas, baby, while grabbing my ass in Times Square. It was the summer. I had a guy harass me and my friend as we were leaving Denny's. We had another guy with us. Friend grabbed onto our guy friend arm. Harasser said that's okay, it's the fat one he wanted to rape anyways. I was the fat one. Guy friend did not leave parking until he saw we're well away. Said I would make a good wife for someone like him while staring at my chest. In front of his wife. I was at work and this guy later flat out asked me to marry him. I was 17 at the time. I wanted to die. Ugh. I had a man tell me he wished he met a girl like me or he would have never settled for his current wife. Also, his wife ended up kissing my fiancé without permission because she was told to by her husband. Many more stories about these two, unfortunately. Why do garbage people like this exist? When you're 18 I'm going to take you to Europe, said my grade 8 teacher. Super creepy. Definitely. But also, on a teacher's salary? Unlikely. Or it's for the school trip he hosts every year. In a similar vein, my year 6 teacher's husband, upon meeting me again at 14, showed me cruise tickets he'd bought and said I could go with him if I promised to not tell my mom and his wife. I immediately told my mom and she immediately told his wife. Was walking with my friend and a random dude said to her, "Hey cutie, I like the way you walk." When we ignored him he said, "I see how it is. We're high school kids, barely 5 feet tall." He followed us for 2 blocks before we made it to a crowded crosswalk. While I was cutting a man's hair at beauty school he told me to keep talking because it excites him a lot and proceeded to show me his mini-me. At that point I just give him a really fucked up haircut. Lol, I should have. Luckily my teacher was close enough to see what was going on and gave him a good telling off. They banned that man. This deepened the thread and we finally see someone in charge doing the right thing about harassment. Good on your teacher. A homeless guy once told me he wanted to throw me in a bathtub full of jello and make love to me. Why ruin perfectly good jello? If used bath water can be sold for profit, then used bath jello can definitely be sold for hire. I had rainbow-colored hair as a teenager. One time at work a 60-plus-year-old customer said to me, "Does the carpet match the drapes?" Never mind, you probably don't have any down there. I've never been so uncomfortable. I'll never understand why anyone would think it's okay to ask something like that, but I guess that can be said for this entire thread. Barf. As a redhead, I hear this all the fucking time. Tinder was a nightmare. Screaming across a parking lot as I get into my car, "You'd be lucky if I raped you. Bitches love me." I peeled out as fast as I could. Ugh, reminds me of when a man followed me to my car after work telling me about all the disgusting things he was going to do to me. Broke into a run to get to my car. Cried the whole way home. I don't think people realize how invasive and disturbing it is to have something like this happen to them. Just reading it seems like just words. But the way it gets under your skin and makes you feel like they think they own you is so disgusting. I'm sorry this happened to you. You don't get a view like that every day. I was 10, and bending down to get something off a lower shelf at the grocery store. I was wearing a new lower-cut shirt but forgot to wear my training bra that day. The guy was mid-40s probably. His wife was with him. She looked like she was about to cry. I never wore that shirt again. I'd cry too. Could you imagine knowing your husband was attracted to children and being that fucking gross in front of you? Divorce right at that moment, I'd be fucking horrified. Like, the cunt had no shame with his wife being there? Fucking nasty. I'd be appalled and would freak out right there if I was the wife. Never would I ever look at him the same again. I've heard so many stories of wives who don't want to stir the bucket and quite often they are abused, but not all the time. How can you love a man who acts like that? Fuck that. I was waiting for the train and had my hair in pigtails. Guy in his mid-30s came to me and asked what high school I went to. I told him I didn't go to high school, I was about 26-ish at the time. He looked real disappointed and walked away. Wasn't really creepy until you think about the fact that he wanted me to be in high school and was disappointed that I was not underage. All this attractive woman isn't underaged? Darnick puts hands in pockets and sadly walks away. Settle down there, Drake. Not so much what was said at first, but the insistence, and continuing to walk with me on my route for like 20 minutes, that I must save his email address. Words alone are creepy on occasion, but it's the absolute worst when there's an element of being trapped. Yup. It's the implication. Okay, you had me going there for the first half. The second half kinda threw me. Had an older man ask me to stir his mixed drink with my finger to make it sweeter. This was at a fancy-ish dinner party my family attended. I was 13, this guy was around 50. He went on to make a joke about me eating a sucker later on, something about blowing pop. Still makes me nauseous after 20 years. I recently had a similar situation happen to me at work. Told me to stick my finger in his iced tea to make it sweeter when I offered him sugar. Told him I don't think you want your iced tea to taste like a bitter millennial sir, put sugar down and walked away. He stopped being creepy the rest of his meal. Oh no, when I was 13, a guy grabbed me by the wrist and he said, "Hey sexy, wanna come with me so I can show you something? I love bad girls like you." I was so stupid that I was still worried about being rude and apologized to him for saying no, but when he tried to fully grab my arm I just ran. These creeps know how to pick the most polite girls. They do, though. Predators pick up on body language and won't go after someone who seems like they'll fight back or be confident. Jesus, I've been there, but I was 11. Alarm bells were going off in my head like sirens and I was still trying to find a way out of without just saying no. What is wrong with us as women? God. This should be a high school class. It's not your fault for not responding. These things often happen suddenly, without warning, and it can be hard to know how to respond. Just freezing is really normal and common. As women we are taught our whole lives to be nice. It is hard to break out of that role when circumstances require. I, too, had a lot of uncomfortable moments as a young woman. I grew out of it and eventually learned how to defend myself verbally and, one time, physically, but it took me years to get to that place. And I made damn sure to take my 11-year-old daughter to a self-defense class so she could learn to defend herself at a much younger age than I ever did. Practicing both verbal and physical responses in advance, in a safe place, is really helpful. Then your brain doesn't go on the fritz quite so much when it happens. And, in taking my daughter to that class, she now has explicit permission to fight back if she needs to. She knows it is okay to say no. If you keep losing weight, men are going to be jumping over the counter to get to you. And the counter was at a library. Lol. I went on a date with a guy who told me, if you just lost a little weight, you could be a model, and asked me what I ate in a day and if I'd go to the gym with him. Classic neg. He must have read Mystery the Pickup Artist's book. I was wearing a Marshall Lee the Vampire King shirt. One old dude told me that he liked my shirt. I said thanks. He then says he likes it because it makes him think about me biting him. I was shocked. I said nothing. Luckily my friend clapped back and was like, "Fuck off bro, your wife doesn't even wanna bite you lol." Glad I had someone there with me. Love it. We need more clapping back like that back to these creeps. Really shame them. This old man, probably 60-something, told me I looked exactly like his favorite porn star. When I was around 13 I was walking in the mall. This older man, to me, came up to me and started saying, "You are so pretty, you should be a model. I have a camera in my van. Come with me so I can take your picture." I, being raised to be skeptical, just giggled and did not follow him. Eventually he became angry and shouted, "Damn it, I'm not going to hurt you." People started staring, so he walked off. Never told my mom. Maybe he was the world's worst model talent manager. I was chilling with this dude at a partyish thing while deployed once. I'd mentioned a few times that I had a girlfriend back home, and he seemed cool and we had a lot in common, so we were fast buddies. Until about 4 a.m. or so, when we're all sitting by a fire, and he asked if he could hug me. Drunkenly, I was like, okay, whatever. But then he asked if he could kiss me. And I was like, nah dude, I have a girlfriend, I'm gay as hell, you know that, haha. And his face went real cold and he said, "Until I catch you walking back to your dorm alone later." I honestly could have cried, I was so scared. Thank fuck a group of dudes I recognized walked past a few minutes later to go get early morning French toast at the chow hall, so I tagged along fast as I could. Never saw that dude again. I was working, doing the whole "how are you" bit to a customer. He said, if I was any better I'd be twins. Normal so far. And they'd be female. And hot like you. Sir, do you mean to tell me you'd want to bang your twin sister? I don't understand this. If I were better I'd be twins. Remark. What does that mean? My dad says that all the time and literally everyone just looks back confused. Please explain. I was waiting for an Uber home from a theater in Boston after rehearsal one night. It was after 11 p.m. This black car that matches the make and model on the app rolls up, stops by the curb and rolls down the window. Guy inside asks if I'm waiting for Uber. I say yes and ask his name to see if it matches. He says, "I'm Uber, get in." At this point I'm creeped out, alone on a street corner close to midnight. I refuse and he says, "I'll give you $300 if you get in this car right now, we're going to a party." At that point I turned around and booked it back into the theater. Absolutely not getting kidnapped today, folks. Check your plates before you take a UViz. I'm a 45-year guy and I always make sure I check the plates before getting in an Uber. That is scary AF. At the local bar, there's a little old man, like 70, who goes and gets a bouquet of roses and gives them out to all the young girls. It seems really sweet, unless you happen to hear what he's saying. One time he told me that he wonders what my pussy smells like. I don't go to that bar anymore. I was walking down the street toward a bar to meet some friends one night. A man drove by me once, then turned his car around and drove ahead of me and parked up the street. He walked toward me on the sidewalk, then when he reached me, turned completely around to walk beside me. At first he tried to be friendly and suggestive. When I wouldn't respond, and tried to walk faster to get to the bar, he told me he was going to put me in his car and take me to a special place. I started to run around a corner. He ducked behind the building there and cut me off ahead. I ran full speed across a busy street to the nearest CVS, which was open 24 hours, and called my boyfriend who sped over to pick me up. When we walked outside, the man was waiting by the exit with his front and rear car doors open, like he was waiting to force me into his back seat. Had a strange old man ask my 3-year-old if she wanted to go home with him. Told me to smile more cause it makes him and his little buddy happy. Oh wow, that is definitely the creepiest comment thus far. I couldn't even process it properly cause I was rushing for my bus. It wasn't until I sat down where I thought, yeah, that was heckin' creepy. Good thing you were in the rush, that guy sounds so devious. Had a 65-plus co-worker who was simply disgusting. Poor hygiene, raggedy-ass greasy beard. Told me he had a Viagra in his lunchbox and that he'd pay for a room after work so I could ride him all evening. I told him no thanks. Went immediately and told our supervisor who literally laughed and said, well, you know he didn't mean it, you're not even hot. What a shitty supervisor. Yeah, he's a dick. Not only as a supervisor but as a person too. I was in Walmart and some creepy guy came up to me and my sister and pointed at his junk in sweatpants, clearly not wearing underwear, and asked if we wanted to touch it. Now I refuse to go to Walmart. That's when you hit them with the Karate Kid crane kick. You're gonna get spanking in a sing-song tone. I was working at a mom-and-pop burger joint and made a silly mistake. I was 19 at the time, the dude in question was 60-70. When I got embarrassed he acted proud of himself and stated, "Look how red she's turning." I too have experienced that pride. A regular customer at the tool shop I worked at asked me to hold out my hand. I present my hand, palm up, quite confused. He flips it over and holds my hand. I forget what he said, but there was some gross pickup line. Anyway, he laughs to my coworker who was standing beside me about how red I turned. Couldn't pull my hand away fast enough. Barf. Sorry. My face tends to turn red right before I vomit from disgust. I was 11 in a street market in Italy. A vendor came up and started trying to convince me to marry his son. My dad ran up and was like, "Dude, she's 11. The guy said my son's only 26. It's perfect." A guy asked me what cup size they were. I've also been asked how much by random assortments of men driving while I was walking to work, in work clothes, which was a t-shirt and blue jeans because it was a retail store. I also got told by a very boisterous gentleman in a Land Rover Baby that asses black man approved. And when I looked around thinking someone else had to be on the street, I heard, "No baby. I'm talking about you." I actually laughed at that one though, so I don't know if it counts. Laughed at the last one. I guess if you don't feel endangered by what they say, it takes a different tone. I was in 6th grade and had 3 boys discuss my breasts in front of me like I wasn't there. The first boy said I stuffed my bra, the second one came up and explained to him how he could know that I didn't. The third joined in the explanation of real versus fake, like they were looking at a painting on a wall, while I sat there flabbergasted at being noticed in that way. I was 17 and cleaning a window at work on one knee. Guy, in front of his 8, "Yo son, you like being on your knees?" It happens a lot more the younger women are. Creepy guys know that the older we are, the less likely we are to stand for that shit. So if you're young who gives a shit about being polite, give them a curled lip, raised eyebrow and a well-placed EU and watch their faces fall. I was in Paris at a Christmas market and a guy came up to me and told me I was very beautiful. Before I could say anything back, he said, "You know, I've been following you for a while and saw your friends walk away from you. I could kidnap you so quick, they would never see you again." Then he laughs, and my friend, who was only like 8 feet away and heard this exchange, pulls my arm and we start fast walking away. We cut down so many alleys, popped in and out of shops, and got on different trains since it was nearly impossible to know if he was still following us. EDA, there were 3 of us, and while we really have no idea if he had actually been following us for a while, we assume he had been around long enough to know we spoke English, since he didn't approach me speaking French. I was young, probably like 19. I went into a gas station to pay, and the clerk said to me, "Look at you dressed like a little slut." I was in a skirt and shirt. I was really shocked, and the only one at the store. When I didn't say anything back, he said, "You get off turning men on, don't you?" I got so scared. I also lacked the confidence back then to shut it down. Thank God someone else walked in and the clerk gave me back my change and I went on my way. Oh, and once when I was a teen I was waiting for my mom at a store. I decided to swing my bare feet out the window and lay back and nap. All of a sudden I felt someone tickling my feet. It was a old man. So creepy. Man 40 years older than me who was always kinda normal once mumbled and made a weird noise and then said to me, "The flesh is weak." So creepy. The creepiest. When I was 10 years old I was walking to school alone and a man walked right up to me and said, "Excuse me, can I lick your pussy?" He then laughed at me and walked away. My dad had to pay some teenagers to walk with me to school after that. I got followed through Walmart and the guy kept passing by me and every time he would whisper, "God, you're so beautiful. I love you."